You're live.
This is Senate Transportation, and we are back live, and we are trying to catch up on how the TIP bond structure works and the gas tax works again as a refresher. And we are here with Candace and Logan. If you can both introduce yourself and you make sure he doesn't do anything wrong.
Candace Alco's Chief Financial Officer of the agency, but this is really Logan's show. I'm sure he's going to do everything right.
For the record, Logan Newberry with the Joint Fiscal Office. Okay, we'll go over, this is a fairly brief presentation, just a refresher on the gas tax, and that we'll talk about the TIB, and I think that the main thing is sort of the assessments and how those work and how they're calculated and fluctuate, that sort of thing. So brief overview, as you all know, we have a hybrid system. So we have the fixed portion, and then we have that variable assessment. Fixed portion is 13.1 cents, which if you look on the chart on the right there, the sort of top numbers there are how that fixed portion is broken out. So you'll see 11.345 goes straight to the transportation fund, and then there are some other portions broken out. And then we add the 1% petroleum cleanup fee for that total fixed cost of 13.1 cents. And then we have the two assessments. We have a 4% motor fuel tax assessment. That money goes to the T fund. And then we have a 2% motor fuel transportation infrastructure assessment, and that money goes into the TIP fund. So total, it fluctuates because, as we'll see, the assessments fluctuate based on price a little bit. The total is right around normally 32 cents, 32 cents, somewhere in there for state taxes. And then you have the federal gas tax, which is 18.4 cents, and that hasn't changed. So
Go ahead.
When is that was going to be my question. My understanding is the last time the feds raised the gas tax was like 93 or 94.
I think 93, but somewhere around there, yeah.
And then the last time we raised the gas tax, other than the creation of the TIP fund, which.
Yeah, so we added the 4% assessment in 2014, I think. It was 2% in 2013, and then it increased 4% in 2014. We also decreased the fixed portion when we added in the TIB. It was an overall increase of like 6 cents on average, but there was a fixed portion decrease, and then the increase of the addition of the 4% assessment in 2014, I think.
So it's been a little over 10 years for Vermont making any changes, and over 30 years. Okay.
Yep.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So Logan, what's the difference of it being an assessment versus a tax? And why? Do you know why those two are assessments?
I don't. There might be a technical reason for it.
It was an assessment because we had to create a new revenue source to be able to do a bond fund. And probably the best place to answer that question would be from the treasurer's office if we needed to. And that allowed us, by doing an assessment, to not have the bonded indebtedness that was created by the TID fund go against the general bond indebtedness of the state.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
So it stands alone with its own revenue source, which was a different revenue source.
Okay, so it's like a revenue bond, basically.
Yeah, it's more like that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So moving on to talk about the assessments. So there's the two assessments. There's the 4% and the 2%, as I mentioned. The 4% goes to the T fund. The 2% goes to the TIP fund.
Yep.
within these assessments, and we'll start with the 4% that goes to the T fund, there is a minimum amount of money and a maximum amount of money that can be collected.
Amount of money or amount of assessment?
Amount of assessment per cents per gallon that can be collected. So essentially within these assessments, we will never collect less than 13.4 cents per gallon, and we'll never collect more than 18 cents per gallon. And those sort of what we're collecting fluctuates based on the price of gas. And if you jump down to the sort of bolded bullet point there, we calculate, or the DMV, I believe, calculates the sort of rate for the next quarter based on the tax adjusted average retail price of gasoline during the prior quarter. So they go out and they survey gas stations and they figure out what the average price was over the quarter. They subtract out the state and federal taxes. And you can see this math if you look at my chart down below. I have column A is the average retail price.
That's working tax, so that includes all tax.
That includes that's what you would pay at the pump essentially, average for the quarter.
No Q3 yet, will you?
Not yet,
Yeah.
not there.
Do you have an expectation?
I do not.
Okay.
So subtract out all the taxes, that's B, C, D, and E, then you get that tax adjusted price in column F there. From that number, you then multiply it by either 4% to get the transportation fund one, or 2% to get the TIP version. You can sort of see that assessment there. So you'll see that for the transportation portion, it's going all the way back to the minimum, the 13.4 cents. Now that's because if you do the math on it, you'll see that we'll collect the minimum amount if gas is under $3.87 at the pump. 87 cents. So, and it's rough because it fluctuates a little bit, but until it gets above that price, we will always just be collecting the minimum, or having the minimum tax applied for this portion. And you can see on the column A on the left-hand side, it hasn't gone above 387 and going back to Q1 of 2024.
Pat, can you, because when we originally did this, we didn't set floors.
Yep.
And then I think you added the floor that came into place in 2014.
Yeah.
Because this was in place before 2014, and there were no upward floor and or bottom floor.
There's no ceiling.
There's no ceiling. Can you remember why and how you came up with that?
The ceiling?
Yeah, and the floor.
The ceiling part was we didn't want to hit the consumer too hard, and gas prices were kind of at the time volatile.
Yeah.
So we went to, I think, 509. Is that what the ceiling is?
508, yeah.
508. That's the reasoning there. And the floor, which was more beneficial.
Yeah.
Was so that we wouldn't take a serious hit when gas prices dipped below 387. So, which benefited us since then, really. I mean, a couple times gas got up above that, but most of the time it was below 387. So we would have, the transportation fund would have suffered dramatically in those days. So that's good reasons.
Either Senator Bruin or Logan, do we know why we set it on the past average quarter and not just make it, let's say for the TIP 2%? Why didn't we just say it's 2%? Why calculate it on the past quarter average?
Because you would only know the average from the prior quarter. Because we don't know what the average for Q3.
Why calculate on the average and not just the 2% of the price? Then you
because we have to know the rate that we're applying to the distributor for the entire
because you don't
quarter.
collect it at the pump.
You don't collect it at the pump. So we have to know what the rate is prior to the quarter that we're certainly in. So we have to use that.
Couldn't you just say it's 2% of what they're charging the dealers? You know what I mean?
2% of the price that they're
This
charging?
is-
No, I
And
it
this
gets
is,
complicated.
this is not at,
Right.
Correct.
Oh,
this is at the wholesale.
Wholesale.
okay,
Correct,
you
yeah.
could have you could have a 2% tax with wholesale. Could you not?
Mm.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Did
It
you
just seems
have,
all set. I just wondered.
name, rank,
Matt Coda, Vermont Transportation Energy Network and the Vermont Retail Grocers Association. Is confusing in terminology and it's common. Wholesaler versus rack versus
Right.
distributor versus dealer.
Right,
Tax is on the distributor.
right.
yeah,
That's the person that has a tractor trailer truck and a 9,000 gallon trailer that
Yeah.
brings it into Vermont from Quebec, New York, New Hampshire, or Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That's who pays the tax.
On the-
But they pass
yeah.
that on to the person they're purchasing it from.
The individual retailer.
Yeah.
and to some
They
degree,
may
this
place
is
you buying
based,
it out of state, so it's kind of hard to do the tax.
Yes, yes, so a wholesaler or wholesale rack in New Hampshire or Albany doesn't pay that unless they're the distributor, which they might be.
The distributor pays it and then it was 2%, we wouldn't know what the price was to calculate the percent.
That's
what
what Jeff Parker at Parker Citgo is not a taxpayer.
Right.
His distributor is.
And the distributor, if we said they have to pay 2%, they say like, well, on what price? Cause I'm.
Right.
What I was buying it from somebody in New Hampshire or the rack in New York. So we wouldn't be able to tax. them.
But we,
So we need to
in
tell
a
them the
sense,
price
per,
is per
yes,
gallon.
yeah,
You need to.
yes. We need to know what because it's 4% of
we
the price of
translate the
gas.
percentage into cents.
Yes, and it's cents per gallon sold, so you couldn't do it, you could change the whole tax, I guess, but
Right. This-
because of the way it's currently set up, it sort of has to be done, so we have to know what the consumer is
Right.
paying on an average.
So since, I wasn't part of how did we set the floor and the top? In this, because I've always thought of this part of the tax as it floated with inflation because prices go up, so you're doing more. And so as we talk about indexing gasoline tax, that would be, you would only index at the pump. Because this is already built as a percentage to go up with the price of fuel at the wholesale level.
Yeah, this is like a constrained version of an inflator. Gas just hasn't increased to a level where the percentage has generated any more revenue. But like within that 3.87 to $5.8 range, it would increase or decrease based on the price of gasoline. Gas has just been below 3.87, so we haven't actually seen any change in revenue. based
And there
on that.
was always a thought in the original piece that you set it with that floater because it's a petroleum product. And somewhat on the construction side, the pavement that we've got is based on, so much of it comes out of the petroleum industry.
I know at the time, there was, we discussed indexing it in Great Lakes, and it wasn't politically well received by either the governor or the body at the time.
But,
I thought,
because it floats with the price of gasoline.
yeah,
And fuel is part of, and, basically you've got paving, which is a petroleum product. They kind of float in the materials, so I just can't remember exactly why it was done the way.
Need your predecessor.
But there's no maximum on that. Yeah.
There's no max on the TIB. And the TIB does fluctuate more because it's just a 2% calculation. So that it sort of, we collect the max at the $2.48, which, as we can see, gas has been above that, so it does sort of fluctuate every quarter, but it is a half the size of the assessment going into the T fund. So and you can see the TID assessment there on the column H.
We don't know how long gas is gonna be high, but then we will receive some extra tip money in the next weeks.
Potentially,
Month.
depending on how long it lasts. Again, right, it's based on prior quarter, and we're in the last month of the quarter, so depending on how much it affects the average for the next quarter, and then
Right.
6 months from now, we might see some red, depending on how long and how significant the change in the gas price is. But couldn't say anything for certain.
Sure. That could help FY 27, could help Candace out in FY 27.
Potentially.
If we won't put it in, that it'll just be kind of like new money.
Plus the diesel part of the equation is all in cents.
Yeah, but then I have a slide on diesel, so.
Yeah.
Diesel just has, again, they call it the assessment for the reason that the chair mentioned, but it's just a 3%, 3 cent, excuse me, assessment that goes per gallon, that goes to the TIF fund. Then at 28 cents per gallon that goes to the T fund, we have that same petroleum cleanup fund that gets a cent for a total of 32 cents, and then the feds apply 24.4 cents. And the last slide is just forecast for the next 5 years.
Oh, okay.
People are
So,
interested.
sorry, I maybe wasn't, I'm trying to get back to your slides. So the diesel TID is different? Or
It's not a percentage, it's just
So it's just a
it's a fixed 3 cents per gallon.
And the other ones are just on road gasoline.
And how many,
And aviation.
do we know how many distributors there are?
I do not, but someone in the room might.
Could you cough it up or?
Matt Coda, the Vermont Transportation Energy Network. They're all publicly posted on the DMV website and all of the gallons that they sell. I'm happy to follow them. But there are nearly 100 gasoline distributors and over 100 diesel distributors. And these are not retail outlets. These are people with large trucks that are bringing into Vermont paying tax.
And they are on the DMV
Yes,
website.
I'll send you a link.
Send me if you could send the whole committee the link, send it to Megan and then she can send it out. Who would be the best to, it's, from a basic high level, we probably should organize to have this done here. The use of the funds. It's directly for bridges.
For the tip fund,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, what's the
And you-
eligible?
Are you able to talk to us about the functionality of?
I have the statute up.
Please, thank you, Candace.
Okay.
Oh, you're sitting.
Hello, yeah, great. So there is a statute on this. So maybe I'll just read
Yeah,
from statute.
that would be great.
Okay. So Transportation Infrastructure Bond Fund, provided that resources in the Transportation Infrastructure Bond Fund's debt service fund are sufficient in the amount to cover all debt service obligations of transportation infrastructure bonds that are due in the current fiscal year, and to meet all other obligations set forth in any trust agreement pertaining to any such bonds, any remaining balance in this fund may be used to pay for, number one, the rehabilitation, reconstruction, or replacement of state bridges, culverts, roads, railroads, airports, and any necessary buildings that after such work have an estimated minimum remaining useful life of 10 years. 2, the rehabilitation, reconstruction, or replacement of municipal bridges, culverts, and highways that after such work have a remaining minimum useful life of 10 years. And 3, up to $100,000 per year for operating costs associated with administering the capital expenditures.
That's changed.
Yeah, I thought it was 20.
It was 30.
Okay.
Yeah. At one time, when we first came out.
But you can't do any of those other three things if you have a bond obligation to meet, right?
Right.
That-
Yeah.
You-
that comes
yeah.
first.
But you can, but you have to have reserves to cover the bond debt.
Yep.
And that's 19 VSA 11F.
Is it?
19 VSA 11F.
And what's the project? So how does the project selection go for that specific funding then? Like once if you've met all the requirements in it's only state projects. So it's not like a municipality would have access to
Well,
that.
no,
There's a
there were,
municipal section.
there was a municipal section and we do have TID funds in the FY27 GovRec for town highway bridges.
Okay, so it goes through those programs. Okay, so how many, how do you prioritize those projects within, is it the same?
We really use the amounts in the TID fund in conjunction with the transportation fund. So depending on where we are in the transportation fund, I would set targets. And for this year, that was for Jeremy's highway division because he also oversees the town highway bridges. And there was also $1 million allocated to railroads this year that have the minimum useful life of 10 years.
Okay,
But I was
railroad bridges, I assume.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I was making those target decisions based on other allocations in the TF.
Would we be able to, I almost feel like one of the things we're coming up against is that we might want to create more specific priorities that the legislature sets for the use of this money as it continues to shrink. Because it looks like the only one that's actually of the future assessments, only the TIF gasoline assessment is positive. Maybe positive is the wrong word. In the black?
Forecasted growth, is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, it's like 0.2%, right? And the TID is so small that minor fluctuations are, I think if you look at the numbers, I could pull it up again.
But to respond to you, Senator, I think the agency in general would be happy to relook at the language for the TIB, but in general, I know that Jeremy has previously testified that there was a point in which the legislature was selecting projects for the prioritization process. So I would just caution against going in that direction. But in general, whatever statute the TIB wants to do.
Well, I think one of the problems that we're experiencing in my district is that with limited resources, while the project prioritization, all of the science and math and engineering behind it makes a lot of sense, there's also something real and tangible about what are the actual impacts and who is vocalizing that there are problems. And so I think that's kind of our job, is when something might not hit the numbers of a priority for AOT, but it's really having an impact in a community where maybe the factors that would have kept it lower on the list aren't popping it up to the top of the list. That's kind of our job, is to wave the flag of, hey, something's not fully being understood about the priority of the project. And while I certainly don't want to go back to the days, or what they do in other states still, where it's one powerful group of a couple of people who are picking the infrastructure projects, because I think that creates cyclical poverty in certain communities and all that stuff. I do think we need to have a conversation about taking a little bit more control as we continue to just the funding goes down, I guess.
I would say that any of the TIB funded projects are in the white book, just like any of the TF funded projects. So we go through the legislative process, and if the legislature would like to modify the white book, that would be the approach that I would suggest.
Yeah, and I'm going to be working with Damien on some specific bridges. But to that point, I think there would be, we vote every year on our TIF funding for infrastructure projects in Hartford. We get super granular about democratic decision-making for certain infrastructure projects, and we're not doing it with this money. So, it just feels.
I think all of those questions, the policy questions about our fair game, except for this was set up specifically for stuff that is long-term.
Yeah.
And you know, to do anything around all of that, we would want to have the treasurer here, because the point of all of this was to make sure that it didn't go against the bonded indebtedness of the state, so it would affect the capital bill.
That's where it got a little complicated.
Yep.
And in the way we did it to not affect it.
Yeah, and specifically bridges were named at the time this was done. Our bridge construction was really in trouble.
Yeah, we've gone opposite.
And we have gone opposite in a way, yeah, but the key to this is that it doesn't go against the general and bonded indebtedness of the state.
And that would affect our rating, right?
Yeah.
If we go the
If-
wrong way.
If we,
Yeah.
right, it would affect our rating, so.
And then our
this-
interest could,
This,
right?
yeah, and this stands separate in alone. Go ahead.
Logan, you, on your last forecast, this is millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's a bit, yeah.
But it's not about the price or the assessment. It could be, you know, it's all the other factors that would go into an assessment of how much revenue we're gonna receive about miles traveled.
Yeah, so I don't know all the
Miles.
things that the economists take into account, but a lot of it is like vehicles miles driven, how many gallons are gonna be purchased,
Right.
what the price of gas will be.
This is from the consensus of for all the.
Yeah, this is the one that we do on.
And the TIV gasoline assessment, that's 4% and the 2%.
No, so that's just the 2% going to the tip.
Okay, so you don't have the 6%.
The 4% is in the gas tax and assessment at the very top. That includes the fixed portion and then the 4% assessment.
Okay.
And then, yeah, the TIV gas assessment is at 2% and the TIV diesel assessment is at 3 cents.
So that's right. It's pretty much slightly decreasing because there's assuming there's going to be less diesel.
Diesel purchase, most likely, yes.
There's slightly. Okay.
So I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I was under the impression that we weren't using TIB anymore, but that's not correct.
We're using the money.
We're using the money, but not bonding.
We're not
We're
bonding.
using the money.
Okay, that's so we paid off the bonds, but we're still getting the TIB revenue. Is that right?
It's paid.
So then the what we use the TIB revenue for, we've the statute in discusses or the statute decides what we're using it for, but then it sounds like DOT decides what within those categories we're using it for. Is that right? I mean, is there a list of what we're using TIB funds for?
Yeah, I can take this, Senator. So the TIB investments are in the White Book and they are associated with projects in highways, town highway bridges, and rail. Sorry, I'm looking at.
Oh, right. And you said that, but so is it a separate area of the White Book, or are projects using multiple sources of revenue?
It's not in a separate area of the White Book, but there is a separate TIB column, so you will be able to identify which projects have TIB state match rather than TF state match.
Okay, and so how do you prioritize those?
I am not involved in the prioritization process, but I set the target once we talk about targets for TF.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's kind of, well, you would move the money around like there's certain things you can use the TID money for, so you can use that for that, and then you.
Right, I mean, as long as Jeremy and Dan are telling me that what they've invested in has a useful life of at least 10 years, meeting the statute, it's TF and TIB are like the same to me right now because we're not using it for bonding.
Yeah,
okay.
like if I put up to our
I appreciate you explaining. We're gonna get into the budget, but yeah, if I open up to interstate bridges, the column with T fund is almost zero in every single instance. And then, but if I go to another section, it would be, and then it's in TIP. It's almost all of it, so with some Fed.
How would I do, and this is probably not as much for you, Candace, this is more for Logan. How would I do a calculation that said interest rates are here and my inflation in projects is here? And because interest rates may be high, it doesn't make sense to bond. What measurement or how would I think about in a formula way when interest rates get lower and I can do a 10-year bond or a bond for the life of something, that construction interest rates are going up here? Where do those lines cross for us to begin to think about when we might move into an area where strategically, if in a thoughtful way, we had looked at a policy and said, interest rates are 2%, 2.5%. If interest rates were 2.5% and my inflation in projects is going up 5 or 6%, intuitively, I would think that it probably would make sense for us to at least consider doing projects to get ahead of that. Is there anybody done any work or anything to think about that as an umbrella?
So not recently. I know we haven't bonded since, I want to say 2013 or 14.
Yep.
And we could go back and sort of look at how we did the bonds back then and stuff like that. I think this would need to be a discussion for a future year to get all parties available. We need to identify projects that make sense to do bonding, that we talk to the treasurers about bonding. And then, as you mentioned, make sure it makes sense to do that now, get in the price of construction and all these different things. So would be a larger endeavor that we could definitely look into. There's nothing today that we have that
I
suggest
think
one way or another.
get into the discussion from a high policy level that for a legislature to say to the agency, if the interest rates are low enough and the construction costs are high enough, and over the length of a project, it might save us money if we did these projects now and didn't wait. How do we think this in policy terms to be able to thoughtfully weigh in to give benchmarks to the agency?
Yeah. Could we, is there I love where you're thinking, because I feel like we're really hitting a wall with how do we fill the transportation 33 million and Fed drawdown problem. Is there a way that you can bond for multiple projects under one umbrella? Could we say we want to bond for 50 municipal bridge projects for the year 2030 or something, and then potentially reduce that? Is that a direction we can go?
I think you would choose the amount of funds you want to bond for as a dollar amount and then allocate those specifically. I'm not an expert on bonding, and again, there should probably be people who
I
think that's a fertile ground.
yeah, I don't know how to get to that answer and what questions we should be asking, but I would think there's at least a point when the interest on a bond is so low and I've got a project that's older, that if I wait longer, it just becomes harder to do. How do I know when those lines cross?
So, sorry, Lauren,
Go
I
for
could
it.
take this. From a policy perspective, I would say the same, even though it's the Agency of Transportation, it's our TIM bond, it's not a GO bond. The same policy considerations for the GO bond would translate to TIM bonding. So what the CDAC, I think it is, considers for the debt limitation would be something that the Agency of Transportation is talking about with the Treasurer's Office. I did
Like
do,
creating a difference, CDEC, or just like saying that a TIF funds.
no, just
But
like
yeah.
interest rates, when is the right time to bond? These are things that CDAC considers. So I don't think that the Agency of Transportation would make the decision to bond without talking to the Treasurer's Office, is what I'm saying. I did do research into the last couple of times we bonded for last year for HTC, and I'm happy to share that. So to your question, Senator, about in the past, have specific projects been identified, or has it just been like a category? It has varied. So sometimes it has the specific projects are laid out in the bill. Sometime there was one time where it said the Agency of Transportation can bond for this amount of money and the agency can choose the projects. But I would say that we need to consider the magnitude. If you look at the latest ACFR, our annual comprehensive financial report for the state of Vermont, we actually have an outstanding GO bond right now. We're paying debt service on $1,040,000 bond that was taken out in 2015 or 2016. And it's specified as the only GO bond in transportation funds. And when you compare that $1,040,000 to like the outstanding 600 million in the general fund, the disparity is huge. And I know that transportation fund is not general fund, but when you see that figure, it calls to question, should we have bonded for such a low amount, so that's one of the policy considerations, and that's what we would be talking to the Treasurer's Office.
Wait, can you explain that again? I did not understand what that meant.
Sorry.
So you're saying there's $600 million of debt in the general fund, and there's only $1 million and change in the transportation fund. So your argument, or what you're trying to explain is that doesn't make sense. We should have just paid for that with regular tax dollars because it's such a small amount that we're carrying unnecessary debt.
I don't have an opinion either way, but I do think that goes into the decision-making process. And that would be something the Treasurer's Office says, yes, we consider interest rates, we consider magnitude. I'm sure they have a list of other things.
So to those.
Go ahead.
So when you being AOT did it, which I don't know if you were around, when you looked into it, I guess, did you like hire your own bond counsel and did the bond of the Treasurer?
No, this was my individual research just because I wanted to know what the situations were in the last couple of times we have bonded.
And do you know if AOT hired bond counsel to do the bond, or they just work through the Treasurer?
I do not know, but I also don't think we would have bonded without bond counsel. That's like best practice.
Well, yeah, that's like you do it, or my question
The
is,
bond
did you do it?
was
through
done
the-
in consultation with the treasurers.
Like one of their, or you could have hired your own.
Yes.
And so if you're hiring your own, I would say you don't want to do it for $1 million because you gotta hire bond counsel and all that. But
Right.
if it could be folded into something that the treasurers are
Right.
doing there, you have somebody on contract.
So because the $1,040,000 that I was referencing was GO bonds, obviously, like it made more financial sense because we just tacked on to a GO bond that was
What is it?
primarily a general obligation.
Okay.
Of the state. But the
So-
tip are not you. No,
I'm sorry, Andy, did you have a question or?
no,
So, Candace, is that 1 million, of like the remnant of a larger bond?
No, that was the amount that was bonded for, and we are paying debt service on that right now. As a transfer out in the TF operating statement, you'll see an amount of like $300,000 for FY27.
Yeah, because that's a really small amount to bond. And even with the capital bill, we'll authorize bonding for a certain amount, but the treasurer won't necessarily go out and and actually really doesn't go out and get bonds for that amount, they wait until they have more collected, because that's a more efficient way to do it. And I
They
would
only-
definitely.
only have bond
Sorry,
sales times a year.
What?
They only, they only have bond sales certain times a year and they collect stuff together and then go out.
Right, but in the capital bill or in the capital program, sometimes they won't bond for a couple of years. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily bond every year.
But to answer your question, Senator, it was part of a larger bond sale of general funds. So the transportation fund component was,
A piece of the overall package.
Oh, okay, so that makes more sense. So it wasn't a separate geo bond just for $1 million something.
yes.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So, it might be helpful if the committee is interested to get somebody from the treasurer's office in here to talk about, because I am interested in, we artificially talk about all of this, but the real question comes, it's like for the general obligation bonds, I look at a building and say, well, I'm not gonna let the roof leak in across the board, but if I do let the roof leak, the costs of that, there are costs to that. So I go out and I would bond to make sure that
Yeah.
you keep that balance. It is somewhat the same thing, and it's bridges and that sort of stuff. So I don't have it in my mind, and don't really understand what we should be looking for to say that this makes sense.
And I'll just say, like, if I understand that road maintenance is really never gonna hit the 10-year threshold. Like, there's never gonna be a paving project or anything that's gonna hit that. But I do think one of the areas that we've struggled to resolve is the connecting roads that seem to be, there seem to be larger populations of people traveling on them, but municipalities are having to maintain them rather than the state. So I don't know, there's a lot of ways, I'm trying to think of ways we can get money for those kind
What
of
are you doing?
things, but.
I will say,
I have
Senator,
those. I'll just-
Bernie would be happy for you to open the statute up to his vision as well.
But it wouldn't be, there's no project that would be 10-year, maybe a
No, so you'd have to remove the useful life requirement 10 years in order to open.
Yeah,
it
but
up.
but then we wouldn't get, right?
I would,
Yeah.
I just say something to you that Senator Kitchell always said.
Mm.
Money's fungible. If I'm doing a bond on bridges and I make that packet, then I can back out my T-fund dollars and I can put them into paving.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a bond for a bunch of town bridges, for example, move the bridge grant funding towards road funding. If you wanted, we
if
can
you-
do it all.
You supplant in one area, you can back the money into another area. Money's fungible.
Well, I feel like our bridge life is so good. Well, like 6% or something is we're gonna only have 6% for bridges over like the next 10 years versus we look at our roads and it's up to 48, 50+%, whatever it is. But our bridges are kind of staying stable. So it feels like maybe a good time to invest.
So
So I will just make one comment on this, is that even if we do bonding on certain projects, we then have to make the payments on those bonds. And we're currently making a $300,000 payment for a $1 million bond. So it's a question of, there might be projects that are worth it, that it would be a question for you all and the agency, if there's something long enough, big enough that it makes sense to bond, but we are giving up money, TID money that we are currently using for projects would have to go to paying debt servicing costs.
yeah.
So there,
Yeah.
it's,
But the real question, and I won't beat the dead horse on this, but maybe later in the real question is that if I'm facing a period of time where I have 40 or 50% inflation in projects, that it might be worth doing something that has interest of 2 or 3%. And I have interest on that. There might be a calculation that you would make and say, well, this project's gonna be 40% more in 5 years. And if I pay interest that is 2 or 3%, it might make sense. I don't, as part of good financial management, I don't understand what a calculation where that tipping point is. If so, for us as legislators to weigh in, unless we understand that better, it's hard to argue. We just went through a period of time where inflation was terrible for us, and that inflation has put us behind the 8 ball. I don't think anybody could have judged or figured that out, but it's hard when you don't understand how to use levers and what makes sense to do that. So toward the end of the session, before at the last few weeks we're here, when we're not doing working to get the bill out. If you could think of who in the treasurer's office and who might be good to talk to, so we better understand that. I think that would be good.
Okay, so you see this less as a T-bill this year conversation and more of a future conversation?
Well, I think we've got a fair number of issues that we're gonna have to deal with.
Well, I was thinking this might be a way to help deal with those.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, misunderstanding.
if you see a place where it can fit and I'm happy to dive in there.
Oh,
But
okay.
I think we've got, I certainly think it appropriate that we better understand what these levers are. Sorry, but we're 15 minutes over and
This is helpful. Thank you. This is good.
Thank you. I'll see you all tomorrow.
thank you.
Dan.
All I need is just one. Somebody turn that on, are you gonna get the right stuff?
Can you
What's the
scan
paper
that?
thing? Huh?
Oh, I guess I could read the paper.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm gonna be referring to tab 12 in your book. Your white.
Oh,
Ooh, fun.
We're gonna start the next, from now until the end of next week, it's mostly budgets.
Do you want a hard copy or just that's what tab 12 is. If you want, that's what I'm gonna talk about.
Mine's right there.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about. Okay. If you want just an individual copy for it.
yay, the book. Put the names on the front.
When during COVID, when we were remote, I got it delivered to my house. By transportation.
Oh. Yes, I got it. I know
Yeah, I
it
did
was
too.
delivered by the
COVID.
police.
Yeah.
It was delivered by a police officer, both books, yeah. I
Oh, really?
don't know how that happened.
Robbie was.
Yeah, I only got knocked on the door by the police and I was like, hi. No, it's your seat. It's your, it's a binder for you.
And.
Good morning, Senator Harrison. It's weird having her like.
Hi,
feel like-
Dan. Yeah.
I feel like she's looking like behind
She's
me.
actually doing the
No,
budget.
no.
I know she can see me. here,
I'm in
but-
there. Yeah. I'm in the circular black thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And amounts of money.
You just want to meet with them. You don't want to add them.
No, I want them to come up with a budget for me.
I'm ready when you are. So good morning. My name's Dan Blabriere. I'm the Rail Bureau Director for V-Trans. I'm gonna give you.
They used
hopefully-
to bring us whistle when they came in with this.
Huh, really?
Yeah.
You want one of those? I have some,
Phil Edgewell's around here anymore.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he always,
I've got a box.
and he brought them in for us.
I got a
You
box
know,
of
you don't bring us any toys.
I should bring you toys. I have a box of them at my office for Operation Lightsaber.
Car up there. What happened to that? Didn't you have-
There is a train car. It's hidden behind them.
Oh, we gotta get
Behind
behind
the
the front center.
Yeah, I know.
We gotta bring that up front.
Yeah, when Dan's here, get rid of the truck.
So I'm just gonna give you a quick overview of the FY 27 governor's recommended proposed budget for rail. It is a very similar to last several years' budgets. It's a project-based budget with a bunch of projects that are kind of boring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you the highlights. That's perfect. Thank you. Of for the last year and where we are, and then where we're headed. So, you know, in the FY 26, I'll get to the bottom line at the end, but the number of projects.
You gotta,
Can I just say it would be really helpful, and you have enough space in here if you also included FY 26. Like,
Oh, last year?
in the future, like it's for the whole book. It
Yeah,
would just be helpful to know kind of what we're, in some context, even though we should know if we're here.
okay, I can mention that. I don't do the format
Yeah.
there, but I
just-
can certainly
wanted to
mention that. But I will tell you, okay, I can give you those numbers though. So we are, because I wrote them down myself.
Okay.
So from last year, our total budget last year, was almost, it was 61,887,000. So, and this year we're 60 million. So we're about $1.6 million less total. So 2.5% reduction in the total rail budget. If you just want to talk about state funds.
So, yeah,
can I just stop you, Megan?
Yeah.
Could you send Michelle that in each of the books, behind each cover, the front page where they have 27, 28, 29, 30, that they reproduce a sheet for us for each of the pages that has 26 in front of 27, so we can see what going from one year to the
and
next.
some of them have, like, maintenance tab hasn't, goes back to 25.
Okay.
But
Some
we
do,
need,
some
but
don't.
they need to make sure
Yeah, we don't all do it.
they don't have them, you know, some do, some don't. And, but we really need,
It's helpful, you can see that.
yeah, it is.
Got it.
So if you want to talk about state funds, there is a $1.5 million reduction in state funds. Now, if you're just looking at T-Fund, so last year I got no tip. You guys were talking about bonding. In 26, I had 0 tip funding. In 27, I have $1 million in tip funding.
Was that the bond or was that from tip?
So transportation bonding is tip, right? So.
Well,
It's just you cash.
Yeah, so
Take
what,
it off.
you'll have to ask Candace how she's actually, if she's actually borrowing that money and spending, but when I put it in the tip column, she gives it to me in the tip column.
Yeah, well, it's tip/bond,
Yeah,
tip bond, so I'm guessing that's the million you bonded for.
Well,
it's,
cash.
no, I think
No.
it's what, well, you'll have to ask her, but, I think it's a future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not
The
past bonding,
the million
It's future
is for the, Wallingford,
Bridge 145.
yeah, rehab
Yeah,
is straight tip money.
Tip
It's
money.
not bonding.
Paygo.
Yep,
Right.
it's Paygo.
Okay. All right. How do you know that? Oh, you're looking at the book.
Because
Well,
she said that we've got no bonding in here, and so this year's amount
Okay.
is just straight
so if
Paygo.
you look here, right, so if you look and it shows, the tip bond column, you can see which projects have it. And in this particular budget, only Bridge 145 goes that. That's the only project I have that has any big bonding funds, so. All right, I'm gonna start at the top and I'm just gonna kind of hit the highlights because a lot of this stuff are just regular bridge and culvert projects. So to give you the year over year, so this year's budget or the FY 27 has 15 bridge projects. Last year we had 19, so we've got a few less. This year has 8 crossing projects, 14 FEMA projects and 1 platform project. So that's kind of the breakdown of the types of projects in this, and I'm not gonna go through every individual project. I'm just gonna hit the highlights.
Can I ask you about the project?
You can ask me about any project you want.
The rail, bridge and Berry,
308,
yeah, that, what's it, but a non-used bid, what do we call it, a trust, there's a name we use with that bridge.
well, it was a wooden, well, it was a 3-span deck over a bridge. I'm not sure what your question is. There was a wooden trestle, 3 piers in the river.
Yeah,
or 2
the one
piers in
that,
the river,
the one that we wanted to get rid of.
and it's gone.
Okay, so we did take it.
It's out, but there's
Still money. in it.
there's money in here for design work on what we do next with it. So there's sort of
Did you take the piers out of the river?
piers are gone.
Okay.
The bridge is gone, the piers are gone. So, yeah, I think the design alternative, the preferred alternative is gonna be, going to a 2-span, so only 1 pier instead of.
That, the granite shed across the river is getting delivered by rail, but might want to in the future.
Well, they're getting them in the yard and they're putting them on a truck and they're trucking them around and unloading them again off the truck.
Okay.
So that it's not.
So the train would go over there.
Yeah, they would use it if we had a bridge there,
Okay.
but they don't.
So I asked, what's the difference in Amtrak between operations, the subsidy, and
So
Yeah.
the first 2 lines in the budget are identical monies. One is, so we have a state fiscal year and we have a federal fiscal year.
yeah,
So we have to do an EA based on federal fiscal year. So you have to combine those 2 together to get our total state fiscal the amount. So it's $9.5 million for both the Ethan Allen and the Vermonter service. So those are identical line items. They're just broken out into federal fiscal in the state fiscal budget.
so our payment to Amtrak is $9.5 million.
$9.5 million, and that's an estimate based on forecasting. And I know Margaret was in here yesterday, based on ridership revenue minus cost of service. So if the more riders we get, the less costs we pay. And it's based on actual costs. So right now, diesel fuel prices are going through the roof. Our costs are gonna go up.
7.6 million is coast clean feds.
Yes, that is CMAQ funding. Yes,
So it comes from the feds through us and we give it to Amtrak.
yes. Yeah. Congestion mitigation funding. So that's the first 2 that I just want to talk about those. And then the third one down in the Amtrak is kind of an interesting project. We're doing kind of station upgrades to get sort of modern, convenient, Wi-Fi, the emergency blue lights, consistent signage on the buildings and in the parking lots and things like that. So we're trying to make the customer experience a little more basically the same. If you go to McDonald's, right? They're all the same. You go to Amtrak, you want to have a similar experience where people are comfortable. When you walk up to an Amtrak station, you feel kind of the same thing. So that's what we're trying to do there.
I think we heard from, with the signs that, directing people to the Amtrak stations come out of this.
So that's a different project. No, this any signage in this project is exclusively at the station, like on the building, the same. Every Amtrak, on the building sign looks the same, that sort of thing. This is not the way that Senator Harrison was talking about, the signs like from starting at the interstate, directing you all the way down to the station. That's not what this is. This is actually at the station. So this is a
Yeah,
different project.
can I clarify? I was talking about the signs that are just on the interstate. That was, I mean, it's good to have wayfinding signs.
It's kind of hard when you can't find the station.
Well, all right.
Yeah, but at least with the yeah, no, and there are some places that already have wayfinding. But I think the highest priority should be the ones on the interstate so that people know that there's a station there.
Right.
I assume for 1.3, there's no like platform raising. Big
No,
projects
this-
like that. They're all smaller.
This is a small project. This is more about being consistent with how things look as opposed to anything else and adding Wi-Fi. Like one of the biggest, not complaints, but one of the biggest problems I think we have is everything's electronic ticketing. You go to the station, some of these stations, have marginal cell coverage. And then you get there, you want to book a ticket, right?
Or you're waiting and you're like, is it late? I can't check.
Exactly.
What's better to see?
So we're adding Wi-Fi to every station.
Oh, that's great, Dan. Will you have all of them? With Wi-Fi next year?
It should be, yes, should be by next year. We'll have Wi-Fi at all the stations. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to be quick because I know we're behind schedule. So there's not really anything big on this other first page as far as, other than the Amtrak stuff or exciting projects. There's a couple of Barton project, that's a new bridge project, and the Burlington Lake Street crossing, that's a new crossing that's added to this year. All the other projects that are in here were in the FY 26 budget, and they're just progressing to construction.
So all of this page and the next page, if I was gonna categorize what's happening here for someone, I'd say these are just general construction projects across the board, not any big initiatives.
So I'm gonna get to the initiatives, but on the first page, those were just general projects that were sort of in the queue and they're moving forward.
And one question about the overall number and the budget being down by $1 million. Is that because there just aren't projects ready to go? Or is that just is it constrained of money? How would you characterize what looks like a reasonably flat budget, but down a little?
Yeah. All right. Rail funding is different than, say, the highway guys, or so we do not get formula funding from the FRA, Federal Rail Administration. You don't get a certain amount of funding every single year that we budget projects for. All of our grants that we get are discretionary grants that we have to apply for. So historically, the rail budget has gone up and down cyclically, depending on if we apply for a grant and if we get it, because they're all competitive.
Yep.
Our last grant that we applied for was a continuously welded rail grant, $60 million between Rutland and Bennington that we did not get. So it's back in this budget as we're going to apply for it again. It's back in this budget as I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's back in this budget as a design feature, assuming we get the grant, because the NOPOS we are hearing from the FRA is coming out any moment. So we anticipate applying for that grant again. We didn't get it the last round. We anticipate, and we have talked to the FRA about why we didn't get it last time. We think we're going to get it this time. We feel good about it. But anyway,
just
the
what
rail
you're-
budget does this because
Right.
of that.
And the real budget is grant driven. And
Very.
given the grants that we're eligible for and have applied for, the up and down is more related to that grant driven portion than it is.
So some of the state funded only items, we had to look at and reduce those a bit. For instance, like rail crossing maintenance, like paving at rail crossings and things. We had to reduce that a bit because our state targets were down. State revenues were down. So it's not significant. And we didn't not do a project because of it. We may have delayed it a tiny bit, pushed it out or changed it, but I don't think there was a significant change in the way the rail budget would have been presented this year based on T-fund targets. Now, if we get some of the grants that we anticipate applying for, we're going to need some state match to go along with those. So that's when we'll have to start really looking at that. But until we get those, we can't. And we've only anticipated the one track grant from Rutland to Hoosick in here as money that we have put up state funding match for, even though we don't have the grant yet.
So if I was gonna, from a high level, the state targets are down a small amount. The budget is grant driven.
Yes.
And the budget that we've got in front of us is built on the grants that we know we're gonna get. We are applying though for grants, for example, between Rutland and Bennington that would drive this budget up in future years.
Correct. Yeah. In a
From a
nutshell,
high level, okay.
you nailed it.
Okay.
And that's the rail budget every year. So I would say that's kind of how we operate.
Okay. Just trying to get,
yeah.
if somebody asks the question, what's going on and you're down $1 million, what is it? We could answer.
A couple of the sort of future grants that we are looking at are in here. Like on the second page, there's a Coventry to Hartford. That's specifically that one. To get a grant and be competitive, you need to have 30% of the design done, and you need to have a very good estimate, not just some at the dartboard number. You need a pretty good estimate on how much the funding and the permitting and all that stuff that you need. So we get these projects to 30% design before we actually do the grant application, and that's one of them. So Hartford to Newport, that's a future bridge grant that we would want to apply for to get that entire corridor to 286,000 pounds. So that would basically allow us to run 286 that entire corridor.
Kind of like what we did with the Rutland.
Exactly like we did there. And then there's another one down further. If you look at the Rockingham to Rutland, that's our Green Mountain corridor. Exactly the same thing. There's, I think, 23 bridges that need to be upgraded in some fashion to get us to 286,000 pounds at 40 miles an hour per train.
Does that stay for the Vermont corridor near the bottom? And I have a question also, but when you have sometimes in the intro part, you have one line, Vermont corridor. But then you go to the details and there's 2 Vermont corridors.
So there are 2 different Vermont, okay, so there's 2 different things going on here. So there's the corridor ID program, and then there's these future grant opportunities, and they look similar in here, but they're different.
But on here, there's just one.
So which one are
Vermont
you?
corridor ID
Yeah, okay, so that's the Vermont.
26.
Okay, so what that one is,
But then when you go here, there's Vermont corridor ID 24, Vermont corridor ID.
in there, right,
Yeah,
okay.
why are there 2 here when there's only 1 here? Which
Because-
that very wants it.
Because in, the way the FRA program is, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So in the previous years, we were in phase 1. In this budget 27, we're gonna be going to phase 2. So we have a different project. So the reason why there's different projects is phase 1 was 100% federally funded. Phase 2 is 90-10. Phase 3 is gonna be 80-20. So we're gonna have another one when we get to phase 3.
But so the whole total would be 1.5 million between these 2 phases.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the Vermonter one,
I guess this is just money for this year.
yes, this is different, correct.
And this is over several years.
And it
$5
will,
million, that's good.
phase 2 is gonna be over several years. Because there's a service development plan we have to create, there's some engineering we have to do.
And this is all just figuring out what we're gonna do for the Vermont corridor, the Vermonter, not actually any of the work.
That's correct. The actual work is gonna be phase 3 and phase 4. That's correct. And we have that on, we call it the Green Mountain Corridor, but that is actually, not because that's what the FRA called it. That is actually the Ethan Allen. And it includes the current route plus the route down from Rutland down through to Bennington and over to Hoosick as a potential additional service or reroute of the existing service. So there's all these different options in that plan.
So this Vermonter is not the
The
Vermonter.
Vermonter is the Vermonter, but the Green Mountain is the Ethan Allen. So that's why it's confusing.
And when you should proposed improvements could be to increase speed, but it could also just be
It's everything.
maintenance, repair.
That's what's nice about this corridor ID program is it can be upgrades to service. It can be additional service. It can be state of repair. It can be all those things.
So the one thing that I know Senator Harrison has mentioned that there is a second train that comes up to like Greenfield, Mass. So if that was to extend to Brattleboro, which I think Senator Harrison's talked about, that would be eligible to be studied under these.
Absolutely.
Phase 2.
Absolutely. And that's actually it's in our rail plan as well. So we know that it's there, it's right there, you know, and it's not, and as soon as we get the new station in Brattleboro, which is this year.
Yeah.
You know, I think it really starts making sense to look at that.
Right.
So when I look at this budget, really, you got 3 grant tracks that you're following. You're looking at Hoosick to Rutland, you're looking at Coventry to Hartford, and you're looking at Rockingham to Rutland. They are both a year or so behind, Hoosick to Bennington. Because they're mostly in the PE phase.
Yeah, the Hoosick to Bennington. is
And
ready-
Hoosick to Bennington, you applied for or turned down. You're asking us in this budget to approve the money to spend a grant that you haven't got yet. So
Correct.
really, for sure in this budget, you know, it's about really, a $54 million budget, but it's got another 6 million or so in
Correct.
it. That in anticipation and the hope that we got a federal grant, you're asking for, pre-authorization that we,
Essentially,
yep, okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
you're,
got it.
yes, essentially.
I got it. There. Is there anything else?
No, those are the ones that I wanted to highlight, those corridor ID programs, the track grant between Rutland and Hoosick. And you know, because those are our big ones for next year. Everything else is sort of state of good repair or projects that you guys have already seen in the previous budgets.
Go ahead. Whatever. You guys are both, you know, I'm trying to read
This
the
was me in
book.
second
There you
grade all
go.
day, every day, so I'm practiced. And I apologize, maybe you already spoke about this, so if I missed it, you don't need to repeat it, but so the Amtrak station repairs, kind of the overall grant or the allocation for stations, do you have a list of what stations those are?
It's every station has, see, the problem, here's the
Is
problem.
the Chrissy grant one?
No,
Oh.
no, that's a different one.
Oh.
This, oh, actually, that small one was, I think that might have also been a Christie. In my head, I was thinking it was a Bill. It's not. That is a Christie. Yes, it is. And it's a smaller grant. So what happened was we evaluated all our stations and we're like, how come they're all so different? Like this one has this and this one doesn't have that and this one looks different. Let's get them all looking the same so that the customer experience is the same. So I would have to look at the list to see which station is getting
Yeah.
what they're getting, but they're not all getting the same thing. They're-
Okay.
Okay.
And I will tell you that they're all, not every, I mean, they are literally all different.
Are you able to provide to us what stations are getting what
Yeah,
as
sure.
a breakdown? And if it's a really hard test, I
I
obviously
haven't-
asked because I want to see
I have a spreadsheet.
if, you know, White River Junction and Windsor are on the list, for example. You know, I want to see if my.
So White River, we just did a ton of work at
Yeah.
White River, right? We have a brand new platform there, new lighting, new ADA, you know, striping and handicap parking. We've done quite a lot there already.
Yeah.
We are going to be doing this spring, renovations to the cupola on top, and that,
Yeah.
that
Bring us the weather.
This is
the
well,
weather vane is, we're not putting the old one back on. It is the one that,
Bring it up.
yeah, it's the replica. But that's historic.
yeah.
So we have to, what we're doing to that is, we have to be careful on actually anything we can change, which is not a lot. We basically have to rebuild.
Are they getting better Wi-Fi?
They are getting Wi-Fi
That makes-
and they are getting the, blue light emergency box, you know.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, yeah, I don't know if you had heard, but Chris McKinley, who is our yard master, passed
I
away.
did.
And if there's any, I guess. My fully selfish reason for asking this question is if there's any upgrades that are happening to the White River Junction station, if there was even a small amount of money to honor him in some way, a plaque or something, I think that would go
And he
a
was a
long
good guy.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, yeah.
So if there's
Very
even like
involved down
a-
there.
If there's
Everybody
even
knows.
$50 for a plaque, I mean, I would, or if you're doing work and you're improving something, if they could name a thing or have some physical token of memory for him in
Yeah.
any kind of renovation you're doing, I think it would be very well received.
I'll keep that in mind, yes. Yeah, good guy.
So mine was a general question. Yesterday we learned from Amtrak that the Amtrak trains are supposed to get priority by federal law, but sometimes they don't. And I don't know if you heard of that, and there's anything that state is involved in that, it's just all federal rules.
So one of the things that we, in my department, we monitor on-time performance on a daily basis, and we get their reports. And we can tell if it's freight train interference or not, because that's a code in the Amtrak reporting. Why did that Amtrak train not get there? Was it because there were 30 kids getting on and it took a lot longer or whatever? But there's one code that says freight train interference, so we know when that happens. And I generally talk to these freight railroads a lot. And when this happens, and if it happens consistently, why is this happening? So yes, it's something we manage and deal with quite a lot. And technically by federal law, Amtrak or Amtrak trains have priority. Doesn't always happen that way. She's right. But
there's nothing, other than getting a stern call from Dan, there's no repercussions.
Well, no, there is, because our Amtrak contracts over what's called the host railroad, so these freight railroads own them.
Right.
On-time performance is one of the performance measures. They get basically a penalty if they're not on, if Amtrak is not on time a certain number of times. Like there's a grace period, right? You get a 1 or 2 or whatever, and that's just normal business. But if it's consistent, the freight companies actually get a decrease in what they get paid on a monthly basis.
Okay.
So there is a consequence to that.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And so there was 70%, I think Lisa Vermonter was like 70% on time, if I remember from the stats she gave yesterday. But I forgot to ask her, and I don't know if you know, if that's 5 minutes late, 50 minutes late.
It's I think it's within it's like 18 minutes or something like that. There's a window.
Okay.
It's like 15 or 18. I was gonna say 15, but it might be 18. There is a window that was considered on time.
Is that the one complaint I've heard
Yeah.
about people taking the train? The one time they took it and then with an hour late.
Yeah.
Like that's fixing their memory. It's like, I don't know if I want to take the train again. We don't know what we can do to increase the on time.
We agree. On-time performance is critical because if you're not on time, that's what they remember. Exactly what you just said. That's what they remember.
We had a whole situation, well, we've had many situations where there's been trees that have fallen and then folks have to actually get out and get on a bus.
Yeah.
And that is,
Yeah.
that's the one I also hear complaints about is I booked a train, not a bus.
So we hope we have solved that. We literally have in the last like 3 to 4 years, both the NECR and on the Vermont Rail Systems, we've actually cleared closer to the right-of-way limits as opposed to the track. So we've actually
There
We've
was
actually-
big crazy saw things.
Yeah, we've actually pushed them all back so that if a tree does fall, hopefully it's far enough away, it doesn't actually come onto the track and stuff. Because it's not only that, it damages the trains. We don't have a lot of trains. Like Amtrak does not have rolling stock. They're literally running out of rolling stock that is available.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. That's why all of the trains are coming. Hopefully 2030, hopefully.
Yeah, we heard yesterday, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, and it's, the feds take the bill on the actual train sets, so, yeah, we ought to thank our federal delegation.
Yeah.
Because they push hard for that.
Yeah, it would be great.
Any other questions? I know I didn't go through every project.
No,
It's a
and,
project based.
Love the Chester work.
I have a question. So I think Economic Development just voted the bill out, S-327. Did they have you in to testify?
I'm not, can you give me, what is that one about? I'm not,
So
apologize.
this is the, it's the Committee on.
So the answer is no, I didn't go in, so, but.
Act related to economic development respectfully report they've considered to say blah, blah, blah. Section 11 of their bill. They do two things, and I suspect we're going to want to ask for the bill in here. one, talks about, 22A, and, doing, and we'll get into that, but the piece that's appropriate to you, they talk about, the feasibility of a rail system better connecting the two states upon review and latest revision of the Vermont Rail Plan and the Vermont Freight Plan. So they talk about upgrades along, this must be upgrades from Burlington to, New York State. And so in the two states, there's a whole bunch in here about, Hoosick to Rutland. Did they have, this is a specific question, so they didn't have you in to testify on any of this?
No.
The weeks. Introduced, it was. 327.
It is 327. Okay,
Economic committee,
yep, they just voted it out.
that's the part with the interstate on the.
Yeah.
Maybe they took his stuff into this committee bill.
Yeah, wait. Why are we getting a walkthrough of it? Are we?
We aren't that, but they just voted it out of economic development. And if you're asking about the feasibility of the rail and connections between New York and Vermont and the Vermont rail system. A whole bunch of this budget is all about,
Yeah.
Hoosick to Rutland is all.
Should we ask Senator Clarkson to look at it?
I think what we'll do is we'll have Senator Clarkson come in here and then we'll make a decision on whether, because unless, do you have questions, Senator Harrison?
Well, I was gonna say, I'm glad that economic development is looking at, rail as part of their, area, just because we need economic development funding for this. So, yeah, I think having Senator Clarkson in is great. And
I was thinking more with Dan, and have we exhausted our questions for the moment with Dan?
oh, sorry. No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, with the committees,
you.
Dan, so I would just say,
Thanks.
a whole piece of this section 11 in 327 is about 22A and, the potential route of a new limited access highway to connect Burlington and Interstate 87
Oh, this
in
is
New York and establish costs associated with constructing such a route.
David Yates.
And then
That's a highway.
second piece of it is about better rail connections. We may want to look at
I didn't catch that.
that. Sorry.
But how did you? Good job.
And just,
Remember that?
anyways.
Yeah, maybe we have Senator Weeks rather than Senator.
Well, they voted it out. I want to be respectful to the committee.
We may need to amend.
Do they have a revenue source?
No, it doesn't.
All right, so that's not as nice
There's
as
a
I
ton of
thought it might be.
Appropriations in that bill, so
Oh, yeah, maybe you'll.
it'll be an appropriation.
Maybe, okay, yeah, maybe you.
Well, I think they should still come in here and.
Okay.
Okay.
So. Why don't you go ahead and you get us started? Which tab are you?
I right near rail, I don't know exactly the
Rails.
Public transit.
Which
Are you,
number is-
are you under, you're not policy.
no. Okay.
Tag.
Oh, good job.
Although he also didn't have FY 26 on his cover page.
Oh,
Some do, some don't. No.
maintenance does.
Another one. So what,
Maintenance, yeah, maintenance, several of them do, but. Some do.
Michelle's on it.
Michelle.
so FY 26, what was your budget?
26, 3.8%, it's 53, pulling up now, 53 million plus, some capital considerations that, like Dan, were, calculating, but,
4 million for 27.
that's correct. And, much of that is the capital projection as we spend down those low-no grants, as well as try to anticipate what we could get and spend down from our next competitive grant.
Hmm.
Can you see that, Megan?
We see. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. It's up there.
Great, thank you.
You can't see it.
There we go, okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ross McDonald, Public Transit Program Manager. And we have about maybe 15 minutes of information to provide. And
Get
we'll
right to questions.
I will. Produce. Back here on, medical transports.
Not bad.
thank you very much. Oh, and says no internet for the State House Public. Well,
Which one?
why I carry these things around.
But you're still
I'm
sharing.
still sharing.
Try to just go back to PowerPoint.
Yeah, it might work anyway.
It's still there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then let's do it.
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, so at the end, we'll have a budget document to show last year, this year. We'll get into some of the specifics, some of the broader categories and milestones and newsworthy events.
Is that?
I just turned it off again.
Oh, okay. Maybe inadvertently.
Slowest start so far, 8 years of doing this,
Yeah, we can.
and I'm still losing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just leave and go through the document. So that we can get right to it. You have the slides that were provided yesterday. Thank you for your patience. So far, last year, we reduced the services in the rural service area, everywhere but Chin County by $1.6 million. We also supported GMT urban cuts to the tune of $2 million. What we're trying to do is get to a post-COVID, post-inflation number, focusing on route performance and not budget constraints. But concurrent to all of these changes, operation costs continue to increase, surprising no one. When Caleb was here talking about overall providers spending in aggregate over $1 million extra for insurance, that was not part of our budget last year. And so we still look at those items. The capital cost of vehicles have gone up continually. But some good news is the microtransit service that was put into place through 7 different regions has been popular for the riders, has been a way for us to match more demand response needs because of the real-time on-demand dispatch and service as we serve those essential services in those regions rather than provide a route. We serve a region. But they're expensive, and we'll go over those costs. The transit app.
Do you have more on like?
Yes. Yes. The transit app that is available statewide and through our intercity services is still seeing about 13,000 unique users each month. So it's a worthwhile investment, something everyone expects. Where's my bus? The 5339 bus and bus facilities grant, V-Trans applied for $3.3 million, or roughly 0.2% of the program. We were not awarded. GMT Urban app application was for $6.85 million, and they were awarded. We did a debrief, and while we were identified as being highly recommended or recommended in 5 areas, the area where we had a documented local share for the non-federal match wasn't robust enough. And that was a surprise to us because we do this every year. It was very consistent with other years. We also had $6-something billion in applications, and we're looking for most any reason to try to winnow that down. But there's no issue with our standing with the FTA. And so we will once again double down on that program to cover our capital costs going forward. Our EV buses continue to move through the pipeline, and that's going to be capturing our capital projections.
Do you have more on EV buses later?
I do not.
Question.
Yes.
So there was something in the news. I didn't see the news. I just saw people referring to the news.
Yes.
What can you give us an update on what that was the real? Because I saw some people saying like, well, the example why EV buses don't work, and then I saw people like, no, if you really, the data is that it was something else.
Well, I don't have the specific to that. I have the experience of my spouse running into the bedroom with the news this morning about buses being, that have caught fire. I've seen this WCAX story. I haven't heard if it's a thermal runaway, which has been attributed to some of these electric vehicle fires. I'm also aware that we've had diesel buses catch fire, and all of those leaks on the manifold and those types of things. So,
So
waiting to hear.
I thought there was something else about not being able to run, not the requirement because of during that cold snap.
Yeah, well, Clayton Clark, GM at GM2 was able to communicate to transportation committees that they had worked with the provider of those manufacturer and had 3 of those 5 vehicles back up and running, and expect to have the other 2 online coming up as we get out of the cold months. That's something that'll have to be addressed through a warranty process. Fortunately, by the time the next cold weather snap comes to us next year, they will have the upfitted facilities so that they can charge vehicles inside with the EVSE infrastructure. So if it was a cold snap, they could service and charge those buses otherwise. And so we're catching up on those accommodations or fit ups so we can keep
So
doing.
you're not buying any new ones because you have still several, whatever that is, 40 or so coming. You're still bullish on EV buses in general.
No, what I would say is that we are continuing to learn the operational impacts of those current investments. 65% or 65 vehicles, about 50% of our fleet. We have a spare ratio of around 20%. That's a comfortable level for us at this time. And VEIC at the end of this month will be providing us a report just on those operational impacts on the vehicles that have been incorporated into the fleets. We are disappointed about the range of the e-sprinters of 100 miles when it's cold. But when we received 90% federal dollars for those vehicles, and getting those consistent awards, it's certainly better to have those 8-9 months a year than to have nothing otherwise. And when they are operational, it is a smoother ride that is noticeable, and we're not having any resistance from drivers. And so it's going to be remaining to be part of our fleet hoping the specs, the costs, all of those things come into a more a more reasonable mix of what we need. So you'll see some of the charging costs are a little higher than we had anticipated because the requirement to charge on peak as they service these vehicles, was something that we hadn't penciled into the calculations. But still, they are performing overall well, and there's no reason to give up on them at this point. But we certainly were the leaders in the country in hilly, chilly areas incorporating these vehicles, and we may have 10% may have been better than 15%, but with carbon the Climate Action Plan and Global Warming Solutions Act, we certainly were bold in our initial plans.
Good, thank you. Sure.
GMT Rural continues to go through the transfer process. RCT's already picked up much of the service in Franklin County, and TVT is on schedule to take Washington County over. We expect to have some operational efficiencies, some lower costs associated with those resulting transfers. We did complete our FTA 3-year review with no major findings, and we're all set for the next few years too. Public Transit Program now has 4 staff in addition to me, down from 5.5, where we did not rehire or did not fill a position for a part-time person. And then one of our other positions was Rick. But we continue to have relatively few issues in getting the work of the day done with some of our changes in processes. So the next slide is really just the 3 big core items of ridership, operating costs, and cost per trip. When we made those cuts throughout last year, we did see a change in ridership. Most of that ridership decline is due to the urban impacts. Operating costs, as you can see, we're bending the cost curve down, but we certainly are not going in the other direction. But this is not surprising to most of us, and this whole idea has been to come in with a soft landing of a post-COVID, post-inflation level of services. If ridership goes down and operating costs go up, of course, the cost per trip has gone up as well by more than $1 a trip. So the cost pressures are real, but we've been able to keep pace with maintaining almost all of our successful services. And it's not just a one issue that's affecting everyone equally. When we look at ridership and operating costs from 24 to 25, statewide, we have a ridership decrease and operating costs increase. But we look at advanced transit at the top of the list, a big ridership increase and some decreases in operating costs. And as we work our way down the line, we can see about half of our providers are increasing ridership, and some of our providers are reducing their operating costs. And we'll continue to work with these providers to try to identify those outliers that you may have recognized here.
Is the MVRT, what's that?
That's Marble Valley Regional in Rockland County, correct. And I met with VT Translines and Premier Coach in Colchester and working with them to see what we can do with their service. And for us, if we're going to maintain our successful routes, we really need to continue to drill down on the underperforming routes to further support the O&D program, as we've discussed in this committee before, as well as to sustain those existing routes. If we look at this list, I did want to point out that most of these routes have been adjusted or canceled or are being planned to be adjusted. And so it's not that all of these routes are up and running at this point that need to be adjusted, but it is where we look at for finding efficiencies and continuing to identify those changes in commuter services and in-town services and those changes that have revealed themselves post-COVID.
So I don't understand exactly what you just said.
Okay.
So if I'm in the tab of underperforming routes, would you, it says years underperforming. You know, of course, I think if it's a 10-year route, that it's been, which one of these would aren't running now?
Sure. Williston Essex is being reviewed by the GMT Board of Commissioners now. We do expect changes in FY 27.
But it's been running for 10 years.
That's correct. And
Is there any of, because in what you said, you said, I thought I heard you say some of these aren't running.
yes. So as we work down the list, Mr. Chair, the GMCN green, that is just this first year. They are looking at reducing some of the service during the morning routes that have very low ridership. That should bring that into performance and acceptable levels. The city commuter, again, it's first year. We'll see what TBT, it's very close. Tri-Valley Transit will be taking that over next year. We hope that that will get back into an acceptable level of service. Springfield in town has received more local funds and has moved to a micro transit service. And so that's a dynamic for that route. The Randolph Circulator and Bradford Circulator reduced last year from 5 to 3 runs. And it appears that those are very close, if not already meeting acceptable thresholds, and we'll work with TBT. Still concerned a little bit about Randolph. GMT Rural on the demand response. Again, TBT taking that over, more volunteer drivers, lower costs. We're thankful for TBT taking that service over in a few months. The Valley Floor is a tourism route that is so different than the other tourism routes, Mountain Road and Stowe, Killington. We're looking at more miles and not serving the exact a lower density area. But it has been identified as critical for the region, and we do, and again, TBT will be taking that on and looking at those adjustments. The Crown connection has been canceled, and the US 2 commuter has reduced its morning runs from 2 to 1. So that should bring that into an acceptable level. SMET Westover has been canceled. TBT Rutland Connector has been adjusted with the TBT or the Marble Valley Rutland Connector. And now we have one entity running that route rather than 2. The 89er is something where for 10 years it's been underperforming, and for maybe 4 or 5 iterations, we've made changes, serving other schools, trying to bring in other business employment centers. We still have not found a way to justify these investments. This is an expensive one. We're asking TBT to come up with one final plan to try to get into an acceptable level. This is Randolph down to the White River Junction area. As a commuter, it makes sense on paper. It hasn't made sense actually. And so this is that's the 89er South. Yeah. And TBT Stratford, we expect that to possibly be removed from service as well. That's a really expensive.
The Noah Khan line, it would get more riders.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Oh,
He's
you're right.
right. The name of that.
Outer Road, I mean,
So what underperforming, what did you say, what?
Underperforming routes are ones that cost more than 150% than the average.
And those.
Yeah.
These are averages on that slide before.
That's correct. And so, we have the route performance report that we can go through all classifications and all routes and compare them throughout the state. And that's something that's been consistent for years and years. So we really do have a nice apples to apples comparisons to take a look. And I did include these categories just so you could understand when we talk about rural commuter demand response, what are the differences? But the next slide really.
You remind me before you go on
Sure.
to what AT is.
Advanced Transit. That's
Okay.
that's the one of the only by state organizations in the country, and it's one of the more successful small entities in the country as well. They don't do demand response, it's only fixed. And then the other providers in our region in Vermont cover the demand response in those areas. And so it's really focused and really efficient.
Advanced Transit.
It's around,
And they have a new executive director. now. They're in my area.
it goes over New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, do we do any support to Greyhound or PT Transit?
We do. The 5311F program is a requirement for intercity investments, which states that 15% of our formula funds need to be spent and invested in intercity services. We're about 17% right now.
So that would be those, the costs, the money we spend would be in the books.
Yes, operations. And so we spend about $1 million on the Route 7 corridor, 2 runs a day. And we spend about $270,000 on the Greyhound link that goes from Springfield to White River Junction, where you can connect to Montreal and that intercity network. Greyhound also provides us in-kind feeder miles. So when we go with Route 7 or when they come into Springfield, any connecting route within an hour of that destination can be applied as with a calculation for in-kind non-federal match. And so rather than spending 500,000 fed, 500,000 state funds for the intercity, it's $1 million fed with no state. And so we're federalizing as best we can through those relationships.
Good. Now,
No, go ahead.
on the years of underperforming. So you got Willis and Essex 10 years. Now, these aren't all based on 10 years. I'm guessing they're not all 10 years old, these routes.
No, that's exactly right. This is a longstanding route that what we do is we ask for them to make adjustments, market, use front porch forum, talk with businesses, go to the employers. We don't say, well, if you're 1 or 2 years underperforming, you're close, but we have to cut it. And so there is the negotiations and work with the provider. We try to coordinate and not regulate to the extent possible. But if we do find ourselves based on their applications that come in, if we don't have enough to cover operations, we'll be looking at these investments before we look at, shorting any other services as we sustain successful routes.
Okay, so my point is, where I'm trying to answer for myself, if we go down one, or let's just go down one, the Green Road, GMCN, it's underperforming for a year. How long's it been in operation?
That Green Route has been in operation for several years. More
So
than
it's
5.
only, okay, that would be helpful to know if it's, if I would say if it's been in operation for a year and it's already underperforming, something's wrong, but 5 years and I'm not gonna panic on 1 year.
And when we look at the graphs, if you're $2 over, it's different than being $20 over, those types of thresholds. But when I spoke with GMCN, they said, looking at their data, and we have on-time data and ridership data for all of these routes. They said, geez, in the morning, these 3 routes, we could probably go to 1 and capture the demand. And so that's the type of level of discussion we have from this report. But overall, these service category costs have increased significantly. The demand response we talked about when I was here last, and I was able to follow up a little bit to some information. Commuter routes, that is almost 100% increase pre-COVID, and we continue to adjust those downward. And the micro-expansion service, again, it's expensive. We hope it's expensive, but worth it. But it hasn't been a silver bullet where, wow, we can serve many more people with just a few extra dollars and bring those per person costs down. So that's been the experience with Metro Transit. So there are no plans outside of that Springfield adjustment that just happened, which serves Department of Corrections and the Recovery Center and the hospital and all of that. We don't have plans to move fixed route services to Micro Transit in 27.
And then the ones that we did start, did you say there are still running, or just, I think you're lying with the popular ones are still running?
But they're all running, but for the Brattleboro evening service. And so what we try to do is look at all throughout the state, new services, changing fixed route services, replacing 3 fixed services, those types of scenarios, so that we could try to figure out the right fit for microtransit in Vermont. And what it's revealing is that those in-town circulators with one vehicle going around and around may be better served by serving a region like we do in Morristown than hoping folks can get to that circulator.
Can I speak to this?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks. So regarding the Brattleboro microtransit, that was an unusual service. It only ran for a year, actually less than a year than when we canceled it, and it was a function of the Economic Development Authority. They had some funding, and it was to get people to second shift jobs. And in some ways, it was a good service. So, but what happened was when the grant funding went away, the businesses who were benefiting by it didn't want to pay because they didn't think that the other businesses would pay, and many of them, or some of them, were parts of large corporations, and they would they believed that they would have to give similar benefits to all of their employees all over the world, which to me that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So but it was, and I think the technology could have been improved, because there were the way that people could get rides, they could be they could hold a spot for infinity, basically. You know, you could sign up for like the 5 to 5:45 or 5:15, and nobody out there wouldn't be a time for other people to use that ever. So it wasn't really as flexible as microtransit is supposed to be. So but it just gets really complicated in those situations. So I don't want to give up on that type of service, because especially in evening service that could coordinate with the train could be really helpful. And I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday, that you can have folks buy a ticket when they buy their train ticket, so that you've already received the revenue before you even provide the ride, which I think is really good for revenue, obviously. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you, Senator Harrison. If you remember, this was our latest reminder that when we start service, we need to ensure that we have a funding program in place for an extended amount of time for many years. With the one-time funds that they give for the non-federal match for that program, we received some assurances that there were plans in place. It was likely going to, SCVT was likely going to be able to generate the funds for their non-federal match. And when those didn't materialize, we didn't have the state funds to backfill. We saw the ridership and cut our losses. But that was one of those scenarios that we were testing, evening, more dense areas. And I agree with you. It wasn't afforded the full demonstration period that we generally use, which is 3 years.
Right. Great.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, and I did have concerns when they didn't have funding for the following years, and the board had concerns about that.
So still let it go. So for us, Plans to Maintain services, we are now receiving carbon reduction program funds to the tune of $3 million. And like the congestion mitigation air quality funds, we can apply those 80-20 fed local or non-fed for operations, where most of our FTA formula funds for operations needs to be having a 50% fed, 50% non-fed split. That's been a real big opportunity for us sustain services without appreciably increasing our CMAQ dollars. And we do use all of our FTA formula funds on operations. Most rural states with FTA formula funds, they will use it for operations, admin, preventive maintenance. We use all of those formula funds for operations and millions of dollars in CMAQ and carbon reduction program funds for operations. And we cover admin and PM with FHWA flex dollars, SDBG funds. And we're about the 4th or 5th in the country in terms of percentage flexed to the transit program, which allows us to have the level of services we do have.
So I'm trying to I'm trying in the overall to think of with the carbon reduction funds, and you say you're using them for operations. Does that mean you're buying equipment or not?
No, operations are for driver wages, and insurances, training, gas, those things for the buses moving around the services.
So I'm trying to put this budget in category and think of it from the high level. So I got a budget that is up about $4 million from 53 million last year. So the total number here is 57.8. So I've got a budget that's up about 4 million. I look at this and go, it looks to me like there's about 20 million here that's in capital. The first in the book, I got 18 for capital for general public. That would mean pretty much to me, you're buying buses and buying equipment for that. So I got 20 million. So that gets me down to about 34. With the CMAQ funds and those are all trying to, through operations, reduce carbon.
Correct. So because the state is in attainment and our air quality has been deemed sufficient, we're able to use CMAQ dollars for transit services. States that are out of attainment do have more restrictions on those dollars and do not allow for those CMAQ dollars to be used for transit operations. So we're very fortunate in that respect.
So what does that really mean in the type of service? When I think of reducing this, what kind of service is that?
Sure. So CMAQ dollars and our FTA formula dollars are used for the operations for all of our routes and our demand response program, the older adults and persons with disabilities program. The last slide that we have to review puts a finer point, and that's why I included it for this presentation, because it's a little bit easier to follow in terms of, what are we spending for operations, admin, PM, what did we spend last year? What is that line item increase? And then you'll see the impacts of those capital projections. So what we're going to be getting there in just a moment, or we can just flip right to that page.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to this because I'm trying to break this out into my simple mind in a simple picture. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. And so we will maintain our reduced capital awards with our regular non-competitive budget, so we can maintain our admin, ops, PM services, Go Vermont, and rely on that federal program to support our fleet. We have about a 3% increase from 26 when we don't include the capital awards and pressures that we're facing as we project what is going to be that spend down on those low note funds. What could we get next year for new vehicles? So that's so when we look at the 4 million, that's mostly capital related on projections that are outside of our day-to-day operations. We'll continue to work with GMT to address. I updated this. It's now a $580,000 budget shortfall in FY 27. And we understand that they've got a much larger number facing them in 28. We'll continue to work with their planners and ensure that we continue to receive the small transit intensive cities or STIC factors that amount to $2.2 million in added federal funds because of those hours and ridership that's associated with those flex funds, allowing them to be one of the top 10 or 13% of all small cities in the country operating this level of services. So we do have some work to do in the future. This year, we're hoping to support those adjustments downward to up to $580,000 and ensure that we're not leaving their services in jeopardy to not receive those $2.2 million in federal incentives. It's a little complicated, but that is the plan, and it's something we look at every year. We'll continue adjusting and forming routes, and we'll finalize the GMT transfer. And we need to consider lower cost service options, those volunteer efforts that you've invested in, mobility management piece that we'll be talking about. Are there, other consolidations or combinations of routes and services? This is the time that we are asking our providers for an all hands on deck assessment of what they do and what they could do more efficiently. So the potential adjustments to the programs, we, as I mentioned, have made significant cuts to date. I'm hoping that shows the VTrans Budget Committee, the legislature, our administration, that we are trying to be part of the solution as we all face these financial headwinds. We'll continue to use a route performance report to ensure our services are efficient. And if we are caught short, we do have some government programs that we could curtail. The Carbon Reduction Program Fund for Mobility and Transportation Innovation. We have about $1.9 million that were afforded to us through FY25's T-bill, and we've spent those dollars down. But if we're short, we could see a scenario where we use some of these MTI funds to cover operations rather than to pay for bike lending libraries and those types of TDM programs. It's not something we plan to do, but it's something that is, what are those scenarios and what would you do? Because we don't have those applications yet for 27. Those will come in the end of April. So I'd be remiss if, I weren't working with my staff and the providers on some scenarios to prioritize and ensure that we sustain those successful services.
So how does that work, like with the authority of ART to kind of move those funds between things? Like, because it's a grant program, so you're essentially saying that you'd be taking money from the grant program potentially as an option to go towards the general funding of GMT, essentially.
Yeah, and so what we have is the one-time $3 million, and we've been drawing those down $300,000, $800,000 a year. And what we're finding is greenhouse gas calculations or the return on investment in some of those TDM projects pale in comparison to sustaining existing routes. So if we were short, we could still have the $315,000 of MTI line item, but those $3 million may run out soon, and we would continue to look at 315, whether it's through carbon reduction program funds, SDBG funds, or other revenues as well that can support those types of projects where the carbon reduction program funds can support operations where those other funds cannot. And so it's really just switching, maintaining the same level of services, but just switching the flavor of funds to ensure that we're maximizing, the operations piece.
I think I have a little confusion about how that is something that agency can just do without legislative authority, but maybe you have to go through a process to do that. So I assume that process would be followed in this instance, but it does always frustrate me when we take from the smaller programs consistently around carbon reduction, when we could take from places that are adding to our carbon problems. Again and again, it's like the lending library, like the e-bike lending libraries, if you don't fund those next year, that's gonna have a huge impact on my town. You know, like Norwich, towns like Norwich I'll get lots of calls about it from Norwich. I'll get calls about it from vital communities. So it might feel insignificant, and I understand the value of funding public transportation, but I really do hope that that's not what it comes to. And if it does start to look that way, I would even appreciate a personal email, because it's going to have I'm gonna have to talk to people about it. Because if it's going to go away, then I think we would want to fund, it's that valuable, especially the lending libraries are really valuable. And those small programs keep, they've been used to cobble together employment basically for certain people in my area. So if that funding goes away, you could also be taking away the ability for certain nonprofits to fund a position. And then once you lose that position, you lose all of the other peripheral benefits that come with that person in our area. So there's a specific person I'm thinking of. So if you do move in that direction, it would be helpful to get as much upfront information as possible.
First mile, last mile on those types of projects, it's not insignificant to us, for sure, because, and we have those personal relations with Upper Valley TMA and Carl and all those folks who are, dedicated to help us incorporate, bicycles into a reasonable mode. But the $315,000 in the budget, we do expect to meet.
Okay.
And plan to meet in years future. It's just not a $2 million item right now, as we try to, read the tea leaves on what will be needed for what.
And I do always worry, because I think these programs have been utilized regionally or statewide, and GMT only serves one region. So just a call out there.
And some of those carbon reduction program funds can only be used in urban areas, and some can be used anywhere. Some have to be used in populations 5,000 or less. And so we work with those environmental policy, Andrea, and ensure that those funds that we're transferring to our program have the right have the right locations for those right investments.
Thank you. That's a good.
And so that last slide that you had is really what we instituted several years ago to try to make it a little easier to understand. Where were we last year? What are we spending for? And those categories down the left-hand lane, show the admin dollars and maintenance and operations. What are we doing in the RTAP training programs? And then we have our capital down below. When we look on the right-hand side, you can see the percent change by line item, where CMAQ groups went down a little bit on the second line item, because we were able to pull in so many additional dollars in carbon reduction program funds, which are interchangeable with CMAQ. That's a new budget item, and it's not an insignificant one. We received $3 million in 26. We'll use $3 million in 27 of those dollars. Program admin's going down because we have fewer staff members, and that could actually go down a little bit further based on what's happened since this budget was put together in September. Administration is up, but PM or maintenance is down a little bit. Those are fairly fungible, and we used to just have an admin PM line item. We separated them to better track those activities, but we just try to square those numbers to actual as best we can each year. And then you can see the operating dollars, FTA formula at 5.7 million. Those are just about all of the FTA formula funds for operating. So between that, carbon reduction, and our CMAQ funds, those are all contributing to our operations. And that's a formula that is not increasing in 27. The state match for operations and the down below left-hand state match for at 9.947 represents a 0.6% decrease. That's something that we don't expect to appreciably change our abilities to draw down our federal dollars. And then we get down to those capital dollars, and that's the $3.8 million that last year we thought we could spend about $8 million in low-no funds, but delays on vehicles, delays on charging infrastructure, slow rolling those things. That 8 million is now more like $11 million that we're hoping to clear off the books that have been awarded, that are not new dollars, for that FTA competitive number. And so that's the lion's share over and other than what we're trying to do with GMT Urban. And so when folks are wondering where VTrans is, you know, as we help and acknowledge the GMT funding challenges, we have moved from 3 million to 4 million to $4.7 million. Put pressure on the whole game here, but that's okay. We understand where they are. They have 560,000 shortfall for 27. We'll see how low they can go, and then next year.
So so if I'm looking at this and GMT is their increase, the direct piece, and they're going up 18.8%. How much of the operating and how much of the capital money would be going to GMT?
So that's the STBG CMAC flex of the 4.75. That is directly coming from FHWA to the 5307 budget. And that's primarily for operations, CMAC dollars.
Yep.
And preventive maintenance. And they're now getting, and they provided some information to the House, I believe, that also incorporates $700,000 in those carbon reduction program funds for those urban investments. That
So if I get a question or any member of the committee that has the sections of the budget that relate to public transit, and for example, the Chittenden County people get up and say, we know that Green Mountain Transit is in trouble. How do I separate out and say the state is ponying up to help them? Because I get the feeling that's happening, but how do I say it in concrete dollars?
we understand their fiscal cliff that they're facing and continue to work with them to produce a budget that's more reflective of their annual needs. When there was a next gen study in 2017, 2018, there was a resulting 20% increase in overall services and projected costs without a way to pay for that. We were nervous in 2019 about sustaining those services. COVID hit, they were able to cover those dollars with COVID dollars, 100% funds, and it just was able to defer facing that financial cliff for a few years now. If we maintain those 4 stick factors, the small transit incentives generating $2.2 million, we are comfortable with them continuing to adjust downward to protect those incentives, but also feeling that that's their right-sized number, and that for us, our plan for the program is to ensure that our investments to GMT do not impact or reduce any of those stick factors. So up to and unless that is is in jeopardy, we're supportive of further downward adjustments, starting with the $560,000 in 27. That will still keep them in that 10 to 13% of those similar sized cities of all throughout the US in terms of level of services. So I guess the response is compared to what, and what is the expectation?
Here's my question. Last year, what would I have expected that we would have, they would have got for resources other than ticket sales and that? And what are they getting in this budget? I certainly don't think they're getting less in this budget than they got last year. So how do I make a comparison last year to this year in this? And if you don't have the numbers right now, but what's the breakout of that? What do we envision in that capital assistance might go to them? How much of the operating is, and I'm trying to create a whole picture of what we helped them with last year and what we're envisioning helping with them with this year?
So last year with that $4 million budget as outlined, we actually provided 4.85 million in actual dollars because of the applications, the assessments, the fact that they had made $2 million in changes. And so then we are updating the FY27 budget to reflect this new level of funding. And before, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was 3 million, and I was told not a penny more. We're now at 4.75. This year, we expect 4.75, 4.8 again for this year. And the good news is last year, when they made those $2 million in cuts, their concern was this could jeopardize our stick factors. Dan Courier, who's my staff member, consultant Steve Fauble, and their planner, Chris Damiani, have gamed out or scenario plan to ensure that at the end of the day, those stick factors were actually strengthened in some categories because their load factors mean more average people on the average bus. They still have the ridership, they still have the miles, they still have the hours of service. Even with that $2 million of adjustments, that's a good thing. And how much further can we go by maintaining those $3.2 million? That remains to be seen. And that is what I'm asking for GMT and my staff to provide to us so that we don't, lose the ability to federalize to the extent possible.
I'm gonna hand you on a
Right
piece
now.
of paper
Yeah.
with the dollar
People always
amounts
want-
for 2026 and what this envisions.
Thank you. And this has been requested by the House Transportation Committee. I provided that review, and I'll clean that up and make sure you have that today.
Thank you.
And that's the budget presentation. We know that we're asking our providers to reduce, to really focus on our priorities, and moving forward, based on GMT Urban, based on our other cost centers, we may be looking at different numbers for 28, but for 27, we do not expect appreciable changes to our successful routes based on budget conditions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's lunchtime.